Hello, team.
Hi,
Hi, good morning.
how are you doing?
I'm
Hey
good.
there.
Hi, I'm Sam Yee. I'm a solutions engineer here on the Webflow Enterprise team. So I partner with Simone to run the demos, but also be kind of the technical counterpart. So excited to
Awesome.
chat today. Where are you calling in from?
Calling in from Singapore.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah,
yeah, late in the evening, but
yeah.
yeah.
Or in the early morning. But yeah, it's all good.
Oh, early morning.
Yeah, 1 a.m. It's 1 a.m. here in Singapore.
Oh, I see. Depends on if you're an early bird or a night owl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're both, then you catch the worm. So you're either
Yeah.
the early worm or the night owl. Yeah. I'm both, so all good.
Good way to look at it.
Well, we so appreciate it. We have an hour scheduled for this demo. Sam and I will do our
Yes.
best to wrap up early so that way you are snoozing before the sunrise. But
Mhm.
again, the focus here is really to align to value. So going through our
Mhm.
agenda really quickly, we'll start with alignment just based on our conversation last week, making sure that we're mapping to your North Stars, speed, agility, cost savings.
Mhm.
And then I will get your feedback on a collaboration workflow that I've prepared, which kind of sets
Yep.
the foundation for the demo that Sam's going to show of working in the designer and then editing content. And then
Mhm.
from there, we can get your feedback on the demo and determine what makes sense as a next step.
Yep. Sounds good.
Amazing. Cool. So when we're thinking about your North Stars and priorities and goals that are underpinning this evaluation today, I re-listened to our
Mm.
call, and it sounds like there are these three main pillars of what success will look like. The first being increasing the agility of your team. We spoke a little bit about fragmentation towards the end of our call and how a lot of time today is spent managing tools. So you're managing
Yep.
WordPress environment or the engineering sprint that has to happen in the QA process and manually finding errors or bugs on the site. And you have a team of people. You've got designers in-house, you do content and marketing, and you've also got product
Mm.
managers who are really experts in contact out. So we want to enable them to put their best foot forward and be able to focus on the site instead of focusing on processes around managing the site.
Mm. Yep.
The second, of course, you said this several times, speed is key. So when you're thinking about competing in the world of ZoomInfo or HubSpot or SEMrush, I looked at those sites yesterday. They have
Mhm.
strong content networks, right? Whether it's investing in their blog or thought leadership. And Contact Out has that on the site today as well. But we really want to enable you to amplify this funnel, like have flexibility over how you're updating content on the site, how you're adding content on the site, and ultimately giving you the accelerator to do this a lot faster and a lot more often so that you're ranking higher when folks are looking for a solution to find relevant contacts. And finally, we want to enable, this is important for a lot of startups, the ability for your team to scale as you're doing this. So that doesn't necessarily mean hiring more people, but really doing more with less. So not needing to rely on developers, enabling engineering to focus on your product and not on your website, and to decrease the total cost of ownership of your site so that it's kind of like this autonomous sourdough starter of a website where it
Mhm.
continues to grow and iterate and evolve as your team grows and iterates and evolves.
Yep. 100%.
Have I captured this, or I would love, has anything changed since we last spoke here?
Nothing's changed. I think what you have shared here is on point. This is exactly what we are facing. Yeah, kind of just put a case in point is like recently we were trying to uh, do something. We had something on Notion, a series of documents and points that we have written up, and we wanted to bring over to WordPress. So that is on our blog and it helps with our traffic and building our web authority. We use the plugin to kind of migrate stuff from Notion to WordPress, but then just in a way to just avoid developers.
Yeah.
And we think that it's faster. We had about like 20 to what's 100 each article. Yeah, from that over, but it resulted in like things facing errors and issues. So in the end, we actually lost some of the articles in the first place, and we had to rebuild things from scratch. So that instead of like saving us time, we had to actually took up more time from us. That even later we had to evolve some of the engineering again to help us, which is like a mess.
Yeah.
It's something that we do not want as well. So if we could have built it right from the start, we would have avoided a lot of this mess. So yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like we're doing like a little bit of a basement reno in my house right now. And we thought that there was a faster way to do it because we've had a leak for years. And we were like, well, maybe we'll just replace this one piece of pipe or like this one
Yeah,
drywall and like patch it. And it
yeah,
turned out to be so much more expensive and like such a nightmare process when it's like having a solid foundation. We probably should have just replaced the main pipe and we wouldn't
100%.
years in this issue. And it's kind of similar. It's a similar analogy when you're managing your site, where it's like we hear this so often with WordPress because it's plugins. If one
Hmm.
fault point is broken, the impact is, as you mentioned, you have to tap in engineering anyway, and it took longer. And like that's the most frustrating feeling because you were looking for a way to avoid developer reliance.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Well, I'm excited for what Sam's going to show you then because Webflow is very different than a WordPress environment and everything is under the hood. And we're really focusing on enabling control over content. She'll show you the CMS. So
Hmm.
I'm hyping her up for her section, but kind of foreshadowing, that's really what enterprise solves for, especially when you're thinking about the process that you're used to today, where you've got engineering, a design team, and then you and the growth team who are managing content. We want to give you the guardrails so that you're not stepping on each other's toes, but also the autonomy to each work in your own section really effectively. So with that said, I took a stab at team roles and what
Hmm.
working in Webflow might feel like for contact out. So I have you, and I don't know if you would want to include your head of design here or maybe the head of growth who would have publishing permission. So that's ultimately the
Yeah.
ability to push live to the production version of your site. But then we've also
Hmm.
got folks who have design permissions. That would be the design team. You can let them loose in the Webflow Designer to spin up new pages, to change the look and feel of content and the way that your CMS is set up. And then you've got marketing and growth who are really owning content. So they could only be working in the CMS. And what Sam will show too via edit mode, easily switching out content on your site, spinning up new pages, and like being able to manage that without
Hmm.
being able to bonk that live and that going straight to the prod site. So there's still an element of control, but you have all of these different little chefs, which is the Ratatouille reference, working on their own stations to be able to really exist cohesively. And then finally, I've put Rob, your CEO, as somebody who
Yeah.
has commenter permission. So he can go in, he can review the site as it exists in your staging environment and be able to leave
Hmm.
comments and say, I think you should move this there, or it's better suited for this to be on a different page. But he is not breaking your design while he's doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does this kind of mimic a vision that you had for site management? I tried to take what you told me and apply it
Yeah.
the way that we would frame it on Webflow.
Yeah, 100%. I would say the only change is like for the design and publish, that is something that we envision not just like myself, but the design team as well, where my two designers would have the how to design and publish. So for us, it's it's okay to fail, to kind of do things fast and like apologize later.
Mhm.
So it's not too bad, especially if it's yeah, if it's able to be corrected quite fast, rapidly. So we're still, our culture is has capacity for that. So with that said, we are open. Right now we have my designers have the ability to design and publish and take more control around that. Where for engineering comes in really just to help in certain parts of the designs that we do not need or do not want, or we need help with like breaking up the script, or yeah, that is where they come in. So for that, those are, oh yeah, we are quite flexible in that. Yeah. Not sure similar with the marketing and the growth side, but yeah, yeah, I think right now if they can edit, we're just thinking whether, if they have the published permission. So right now they do. Um, and in some cases we also do have previously uh guest bloggers or guest authors on our site as well. Typically what happens is that we have tried a model where we invited them over as like writers, and then they contribute to a blog. That seems to work. If not, then we had our head of partnership to help translate those articles into uh, and transfer it into WordPress. So we kind of figure out what's that workflow, the best workflow is going to be look like. But what is great is that from what I'm seeing is that there are different permissions levels and authorities that we can make that adjustment quite easily
That's
with
exactly.
it.
And none of this is static. So it's not like
Mm.
once you have publishing permission, it's going to be yours forever. Or if you were to bring in the growth team and enable them to have publishing permission, but it's not working, it's really fluid. So you can change the roles and permissions based on the structure of contact out, which is amazing
Hmm.
because it is this like growing and evolving thing. So
Yeah,
this is just kind of like the framework when you're thinking about when Sam's diving into the designer and the demo environment to
sure.
think about. So who's going to be working with design and then who's going to be working with content, and there can be crossover when and if needed.
Gotcha. Okay, one question. What is classes? Is it like courses, or is it like another definition in Webflow? The ability to edit existing classes.
Yeah,
Yeah, just trying to figure
a,
out.
a class. So you remember how you mentioned components when we spoke
Mm-hmm.
last week? Webflow
Yep.
uses best in class design principles. So, Sam, keep me honest on the differences between classes and components. I think classes are like a general naming convention, but you tell me.
Yeah, so we use front end development concepts. So the classes would
Gotcha.
be however you are how we're generating that style sheet, that CSS style sheet within your Webflow
Mm-hmm.
project. So that
Mm-hmm.
class is holding all of those style properties that you can apply to your different elements. And I can show you what that would actually look like within the designer. And then
Okay.
um, compared to components, components are like reusable chunks of your website, like nav bars or footers or CTA sections, things that you'd want to reuse consistently throughout your project.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yep. Awesome.
Great
Perfect
question.
Yeah.
segue into the designer.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So I was taking a look kind of at your previous chat with Simone, and the main pain points that I heard first was, needing to increase the speed at which you're shipping your content and your new changes to market.
Yep.
You're running into bottlenecks there, and then being able to actually work with a larger team, like a scaling out team within the project. And how does that collaboration actually work within Webflow? So I've broken this demo up into two parts. And the first, we'll take a look at basically the fundamentals of Webflow,
Mm.
building within Webflow's visual designer and how that reduces the reliance on your engineers to code a front end or a marketing website, being able to give that all back to your marketing team and your design team to manage solely on their own. So we'll take a look at just kind of a quick overview of the designer. It's just kind of a quick little tour guide or a tour around the designer. And then we'll start by building a net new landing page just with using components. We're going to take a look at what that looks like on the design side and on the edit side. So this would be kind of where your designers are working and then where your content marketing folks might work, and just by working with the content.
Yep.
We're going to take a look at our content management system, so how you would manage any of that long form content. I'll also touch on how you would be able to migrate your existing content over. Hearing that you had some issues where you thought you were going to be able to cut corners, it was going to speed up the rate at which you were shipping or bringing over that existing content. We can take a look at what that would look like within Webflow to make that transition. Throughout the demo, I'll just weave in edit mode so you can make sure to see what that would look like on both sides of the coin for your team. I know that this is a very high level look at the agenda for the demo, but is there anything in particular that you want me to throw in there that you're interested in seeing?
No, no, I'm not sure if it's going to be covered. It was just given that we have going to have a bit of a lot of different contents, depending on the blog or on the site, we wanted a way to categorize content. So I'm not sure how Webflow does it. Is it through tags? Is it through labels? And then, on the front end, either by a drop-down menu or some sort of filter where users can quickly either search or filter into that category of content. That is something that we are thinking about. Yeah, and we kind of limited and restricted with like WordPress on that.
Cool, for sure. Yeah, I can cover that in the second section here when we chat through our CMS. Sounds
Beautiful.
good.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. So I am in Webflow right now. Just going to do a high level overview of the designer, what we're looking at here. Everything in the middle, this is your canvas. This is obviously what's going to be rendered to the web when you ultimately hit publish. Over to the left, we have a variety of tools. The main one we're going to be focusing on would be the add panel. And this is where you're going to find all of your visual representations of your HTML elements. So these are kind of like your building blocks that you would use to get started on creating some net new designs. I know that you guys are working with Figma. So if you were to continue using Figma as kind of your prototyping tool, essentially all you would need to do with that plugin is copy and paste your designs from Figma into Webflow. But if you were to start by designing, net new designs within Webflow, this is where you would start by using, things like div blocks and typography elements. And if we scroll down, you can see things like forms and different media elements as well. Cool. So anytime we're using the add panel, we're actually writing HTML. So let's say I want to add a new heading to the page. I would just grab it, drop it onto the canvas. Let's change it to an H2 in the settings. And then we can say, whatever that's going to look like, we can change that copy right on the canvas. So over to the right now, we're going to take a look at the style panel. So this is obviously quite dark. We're going to maybe want to change the color of the font, maybe want to change the font, but we're going to be doing that and making these changes in the style panel. And this is kind of like your control center for writing CSS. So if I scroll down to, the typography section, you can see that we're using a quite dark variable. So I'm just maybe going to bump this up to like this light orange color. And what we're actually doing is writing that CSS. So if I were to open up our CSS preview and maybe add a little bit of padding here, you can see that immediate feedback. And so this is where we're actually writing those classes. So you can see here that I've got this heading 3 style selector chosen. We can rename this to whatever, and you're going to see that generated in this CSS preview. So when we're saying classes, we're actually working with, writing classes, front-end development, CSS classes.
Gotcha. Does this get saved to like a design system?
Good
or do I need to
question.
manually? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So This is where we're going to be doing all of our designing. Best practice,
Mhm.
though, when you're building within Webflow is to create a style guide. So if I open up this pages panel
Mm.
here, you can see that we've got a drafted style guide. And
Yep.
so if I open up the style guide, you can see that this Felix company has put together their company colors, different typography fonts or different fonts for their different typography elements.
Yep.
Anything that you'd want to add in terms of classes and however you're going to style things like buttons or form fields, anything like that, you can throw this into the style guide as kind of your point of reference. Let's say we wanted to make a wide sweeping change to
Yes.
all your H2s. What I'm going to do is select this H2, select all H2 headings, and what this is going to do is make the changes to all the H2s on that CSS style sheet. So we want to change it to something like Great Vibes. We can change that to a scripted font. Now, if we go back to this home page, you can see that any H2 that
Mm.
exists on your page will be updated. So when we're thinking about making, maybe we're going to undergo a rebrand or make any wide sweeping changes across the site. If we're working with that functional style guide, we can make sure that we're doing that in a scalable way. We don't have to go in and find each of those individual elements and make those changes. This is how we're going to really kind of avoid any design creep and
Yep.
work off of that design system.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So on this on the right panel, I do see like there is four on this page that is using H2 tag and eight on other pages. Am I able to see what is the other eight that is on the other pages, like a breakdown of it, so that I can manually go in and review? Not sure if you understand. On the info panel on the right, previously I saw like now it's showing H in blue color,
Mhm.
H3, one on this page. Previously there was an option where they were showing like, oh, there are eight um others that is using H3 or H2 previously.
So are you
Would I
wondering,
be able?
are you
Hmm.
wondering if there's a way to see which elements have that class applied to it?
Yeah, yeah, and other pages that had a class applied to it.
Yeah. So there is no way to kind of pull out all the elements that have the different classes applied to it. This is a very
Okay,
general class name. We probably want to change this to something like, hero subheader or something. Like we would want to make it a little bit
okay,
more specific.
specific.
So then it would
Yep,
be easier to actually locate when these classes are being applied. This is a very generic automated class that's applied when you add in a new H2. So you'll want to make sure that once you have your design system in place, that you are
yep.
applying the respective class. But to answer your first question, there isn't a view that would show you all the elements that have those different classes applied.
Sure, no worries, all good. Yeah, it was just you're doing while you're doing that, I was thinking, oh, if there are other pages that was using that, it would be great to kind of see exactly how you did it, like on other pages, how would that affect the design?
Mhm.
Or should we, yeah, or do I need to go in and make other minor adjustments? But yeah, all good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, kind of to tack on to the design system. So while we are writing some different classes and we're applying different classes that already exist and are living in your style guide,
Mm.
we also have variables. So opening up this variables panel, you can see that we've got a number of different colors that
Yes.
have been saved in this project. And so another way to make sure that you are avoiding any kind of variations in the different color palettes that you're using, you can also add fonts and sizing and spacing. So all of those variables can live in your project here. And actually, when we're thinking about using
Mhm.
Figma, if you already have your design system built within Figma and you've got variables saved, you
Yeah.
can actually make that
Yeah.
two-way sync once you've got that plugin connected. So it's a really great way to make sure that, your designers can work over here. If they
That's
make
great.
any changes, it'll update in your variables panel and then, with your project as well. So variables mixed with your style guide and properly using classes, you should have a pretty clean
Sounds good.
and yeah, um, smooth transition whenever we're making any kind of design changes.
Yep. Awesome.
Cool. So that was a quick little, a very high level overview of the designer. I want to make sure that we're jumping into components. So I'm going to open
Sure.
up this pages panel and then just click create new page. We're just going to call it new page and click create. So now we're going to take a look at what things look like when we have a blank canvas, but we're going to spin up a new page by using just components. So components, like I said earlier, are those reusable chunks of your website. You can find them in this component library here. So you can see in this project, I've got a number of different nav bars that you might use in the project, different header sections, customer sections. So whatever kind of reusable pieces that you might want to find in this component library, you can actually design them in the designer and then save them in your component library. So if I were to just spin up a new page just using components, we can just grab, any of these and kind of puzzle piece together that new landing page. And so this really takes a load off of your designers because these have been previously designed and then saved in your project. So when your marketing folks do need to come in and spin up a net new page, then all they need to do is jump into this component library and piece it together. So we'll just grab a footer here. So perfect. We've successfully put together this page. There's not a lot of content on here. I chose maybe the wrong components, but we've successfully put together a net new page. At the top, you can see that we are currently working in our desktop breakpoint. So if I scale down into these smaller devices, you can see that everything is mobile responsive. You can see that these logos are nicely stacked. We've got cards that are nicely stacked. So you can kind of, again, you don't have to go in or pull in any engineers to write these media queries for you. They're already done. And if I toggle on the preview button, you can see that they're also, these components are also holding on to some animation or interaction properties that have been previously added to the project.
Awesome. Yep.
Cool. So that would be working in the designer. So if we kind of flip things over to what things would look like for your marketing folks, I'm going to switch into edit mode. So right now I'm in design mode. I'm going to switch into edit mode. So this might be a view. Let's say your designers spin up a new page. They can pass it over to your marketing folks, and now they can go in and, make the necessary copy changes. So let's say, we're going to use this copy here. We can just make these changes right on the canvas. And this is something that they don't need to be fully enabled on how to design the pages, but if they're just working with content, you can see that they have immediate access on these editable elements. And then when they're ready to go, all they need to do is click publish. If they have publishing permissions, they can click publish to staging and eventually publish to production. So this is part of our publishing workflows, which I'll talk about in the second half of the demo. But essentially in a matter of seconds, we had that net new page that both our design teams and our marketing teams were working on. And we didn't have to pull in any engineers to actually get that page live. So in a matter of seconds, we were able to get that onto your website.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I know that was kind of a full, it was a lot of stuff, but I want to pause here and hear kind of how this resonates with you and how it kind of compares to what you're currently doing with your team.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely more efficient. So like for us, for example, especially in terms of content, we will do it not the most sophisticated, but we'll just do it on a Google Doc, with the kind of even with the rough layout and where content sits and everything, before we kind of start on design. So again, it handles the process, but with this, I guess we can start with the design and content at a simultaneous. No, we'll start with designs first. Then once we got the structure laid out by the designer, then the content team can go in. Or we can do vice versa. Actually, it shouldn't matter. But yeah, it gives a lot of more flexibility and also kind of a more real-time update. Because previously, when it was on a Google Doc, yeah, we are just using tables functions to just lay out things on the page to kind of mimic the best that it would look on your website. But this yeah, definitely more flexibility with that because we didn't have that before. Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard Google Docs being used as part of a website as part of the development tool. But
Yeah.
is that just because your
Uh,
marketing folks, it's something that your marketing folks can work in alongside your design teams,
yeah.
or it's just kind of like
It's
its root?
it's so that we can kind of focus on content first, to just align on that first, depending, so that the designer one can determine the length of content, like let's say the paragraph, the spacing that they want to allocate to it, or is it going to be the right component? Um, that's one piece, but the more important one is so that we can get feedback from stakeholders, and not kind of get them to focus on the content versus kind of looking at the design. Yeah.
Mhm.
Not sure. Yeah, especially if like our CEO, if head of growth and stuff, getting them just a bare minimum, an MVP version, just focusing on content, seems to work for us better. Yeah, when we kind of couple it with design, maybe because of the limitation that we had, and every time when we want to do that, it means that we had to publish it or we had to put it into a Figma prototype, which feels a bit restrictive in terms of how they can comment, edit. Yeah, sometimes it feels too polished that I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I hear you. And that's something we'll kind of loop back to those different roles and
Mm,
permissions that Simone was talking about. But we've heard this before where you might, you, the more context switching that's involved in your process
yeah,
can lead to more, you know, unapproved edits going out to and live on productions. And so with Webflow,
yeah,
we really want to keep that under the hood and keep that within one space. So being able to, blend the design world and the marketing or the edit content world together really reduces the risk of shipping things that haven't had eyes on it in the proper stages that need to have eyes on them.
yeah,
Same with kind
makes
of
sense.
that final approval process, being able to use something like this commenter mode to be able to kind of go in here and say, fix the spacing
Mm,
here, something like that. We can post that
yeah,
feedback and our teams aren't jumping into Slack or Teams or that Google document or email to make sure that change is made. We can kind of keep this all within Webflow. Um,
cool.
yeah.
So what you're saying, what if I'm hearing correctly, Sam, is that if someone's commented or commented on the page, there will be like a Slack notification sent over, and that's something that we can enable as well.
Yeah. So not a Slack notification, but if I said something like,
Mm.
hey, John,
Makes sense.
what
Okay.
they'll get is an email notification. So if it's assigned specifically to somebody who's working in that project, there are ways to
Mm.
notify them with an email. And then I guess if you can notify through email, then you can actually push that to Slack as well. So yeah, you probably could do that.
Okay, cool. Cool. Sounds good. Yeah,
Cool.
because for us, we work primarily on Slack. So yeah, that'll be helpful. Yeah,
Perfect.
if possible. Sweet.
Yeah, actually something you'd probably be interested in, and we'll kind of touch on this when we go into the advanced collaboration
Mm.
portion, but we have a site activity log, which essentially tracks all the changes that are being made in your site. And we recently
Mm.
rolled out a site activity log API. And so
Yep.
that's another way where you could send notifications
Ah,
to Slack, depending, or like if for every change or depending on what kind of change you want your team to be notified of. And so that would be
yep.
another way as well.
Beautiful.
Cool. All right, so now lastly, we're going to take a look at the content management system. You can access the CMS from this layer cake icon here. So if I open this up,
Mm.
you're going to see that we have a number of different collections that are created. If you wanted to start a new one, like blog articles, all you would need to do is click create new collection. You can choose from our templates that are already available. So I'm just clicking blog posts here, but you can also go in and just add any fields that you'd want to use in order to define that content structure. However, you want these different
Mm.
pieces of content to be laid out on your blog pages, your blog articles template page. So
Yep.
I don't know if I got the right order of those words, but then yeah, you get what I mean. But you
Yeah.
can choose which fields you want, and you can see the preview over to the right. When you're ready and you're
Gotcha.
happy with it, you can save that collection, just click Create Collection. And the next step in the process is actually populating it with content. So you can do that in a few ways. You can manually add a new blog post. So just by clicking New Blog Post, you can copy and paste content in or just type it out directly in those fields. We can add some placeholder content, which we'll do now just for the sake of this demo. Or what you can do is import existing content. So for the content that you've already got, you can export that as a CSV, and then you can import it. And so what that looks like is just having to map the fields that you've defined within the Webflow CMS to those cells that you've got in that CSV file. So really, really
Gotcha.
easy and user-friendly way to bring that content into Webflow.
In terms of migrating content, let's say from WordPress, is there like a one-click solution, or do we have to kind of I don't know, download, export the content of our WordPress into a CSV and then re-import it, like clean it up and then re-import it onto Webflow? Yeah, what
Yeah,
does that type of workflow look like?
yeah. We actually have a Pages plugin or a Pages app. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
100% familiar with it, but I can kind of take a look into that and share that with you to take a look. But that's how we
Okay,
kind of support that migration over from WordPress. And
sure.
then for your dynamic or your CMS pages, then you would export that as a CSV file. And then it should be a very easy one-to-one mapping of your fields that you've defined in Webflow to the cells in your
Yep.
in the
In
export.
your collections.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If your content structure that you've defined within Webflow matches what's already existing within WordPress, then it should be a
Mhm.
pretty easy mapping.
Sure.
Cool. So once we've got our content, our collection populated with content, the last step is actually designing that template page. So I'm going to go over to my pages panel. I'm actually going to start working with this learning articles because I've already got a template
Sure.
already designed. But you can see that I've got a few items living in this collection. If I go over to
Mm-hmm.
this template or this pages panel, you'll find all of our CMS collection pages in purple. So CMS is represented in purple, and you can see here that we've got this learning articles template page. So previously, I've designed this learning articles page. This is what I want it to look like. I've got an H1 for the name field. I've got a paragraph for the post summary image field. However you want, you would use this add panel to start designing your pages, or you can use your Figma designs to start designing what that article page is going to look like.
Sure.
What we've done is we've bound these elements to the fields within your CMS. So you can see here that I've connected this H1 to the name field within the CMS. And so up at the top here, you can see that we've got our existing articles that live in that collection. But let's say we'll switch into edit mode here. Let's say we need to spin up a net new article and we're working just with content now. We can go into our CMS, we can go into learning articles, click add new article. This is a new article. We can add the short description here, main content, and then we can upload an image. Let's say we're all done, we click create. And now because we've already done the work of binding those elements to our CMS fields, if I go back into our learning articles template and go into this dropdown, you can see our brand new article has already been generated. So Webflow does all the heavy lifting for you. So once you've got everything designed, all you need to do is worry about populating your site with content, making sure you've got fresh new content, hitting publish. Webflow is going to generate those net new pages for you.
Gotcha. So even if I'm editing the content here, the headings, the short description, and even the main content, those edits will be reflected onto the CMS as well.
Yeah, so
I'm
if
getting
you
it right.
were,
Yeah.
yeah, so if you were, if you wanted to make any changes to the content on the page, what you're going to see is this CMS button. So any of these different articles that we click into, you're going to see this CMS button. If you click that, it's going to take you right to that element in its respective CMS item within that collection. So it's going to jump right into that that article that you're working with. And so this is where you're going to make any of your content changes.
Okay, so I'm only able to make the content changes here, not on the previous panel on the editing mode or the editor mode.
Yeah, so for the CMS, for
Gotcha.
any of our dynamic pages,
Mm-hmm.
you'll make the changes from within this view
Okay.
here, the CMS. But if you're working
Mm-hmm.
with static pages, so if we were to go to this home page, you can
Gotcha.
see that we can actually make, you know, some copy changes right on the pages. So those are the differences between our static pages and our CMS pages.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
Understand.
And I will
Right.
say, being able to do like WYSIWYG with the CMS, so make changes to
Mm-hmm.
CMS pages visually, is a highly requested feature. And some,
I assume so.
yeah,
Yeah.
something that we're thinking about. And I think when Contact Out is thinking about like using Webflow, is
Yeah.
almost this like building block approach, right? Where like you're getting
Mm.
your content folks used to working in edit mode, and then obviously we would support you with setting up your CMS effectively for your blog and like other content. And then as you
Mm-hmm.
continue to grow on Webflow, hopefully we will have this
Yeah.
ability to make it always default to visual first. So these are things that we're really thinking about as an organization.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Like the case in point is so that because for us internally, we do have that as well. Where let's say, for example, we be at a heading and you're writing, for example, the one that you're writing, you copy and paste like what is it? 4x reply, more reply with AI. And with the AI becoming like an orphan on the page, that is or on a new line, like a single word, that is something that we try to avoid because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't look like aesthetically right?
Yeah.
So if we are able to do that live on the page, it allows us to make edits to the copy. For example, like the AI is like dangling on the second line, which
Mm-hmm.
a little pet peeve of me. So something like that, then we would either have to adjust the heading size, the font size, or we will have to adjust the copy. So something if we are able, similar to kind of like even for the blog as well. Those dynamic pages, if you're able to kind of see that, we will adjust the content accordingly just to make it read nicer, look nicer on the page. Yeah, and that's the reason why. If not, then we just have to go back and forth. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Before I worked here, I was a graphic designer, so this is actually driving me nuts as well. But if you were to, if you wanted to make
Yeah.
changes to the font size, so that would
Yeah.
be changing the properties of that class, this H1 hero
Yes.
class. Or you would need to change the bounds of the div block that we're working in, but that would be on the kind of the shoulders of the folks who have design permissions.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
if you didn't have, if you needed a quick turnaround, then of
Yeah.
course your marketing team would be able to go in and just kind of change the copy and kind of maybe add a couple more words or something there. So it really depends on kind of what's top of priority. If you want to change the size of the font, or
Mhm.
kind of the overall look of that component, or just kind of change the
Mhm.
copy in there. But you do have, obviously both options.
Flexibility on that. Yeah, sounds
Mhm.
good.
Cool. All right, so the next section would be, we've taken a tour around Webflow. We've taken a look at building net new pages, net new static pages with components, and then we took a look at what that would look like building these new long form dynamic pages within the CMS, and all kind of on the design side and the edit side. But now we're going to actually take a look at what this would look like if you were to collaborate with your cross-functional partners at the same time. So when you move into the enterprise space, this is what we're really focusing on, enabling these teams to kind of work simultaneously together. So we have this really efficient machine with working within Webflow, but we're also, we're able to ship out that content at a faster rate. Search engines love fresh new content. So we want to make sure that we're not creating any kind of hurdles or bottlenecks in making sure that you're able to push that content out live. So
Yeah,
how we
that
do
makes sense.
this is with page branching. We keep an eye on all these different changes in our publishing workflows. And then we want to make sure that we're tracking all of the changes to make sure that you just have this layer of security available for you with the site activity log. So first, page branching. This is how we're actually going to enable multiple folks to be working and designing and building at the same time. So if I go back to my home page here, if I were to, if I wanted to make a change, let's say I wanted to remove this heading here, best practice would be to open up our pages panel and create a page branch. And so what this is going to do is create a duplicate version of that home page. You can tell that, or page branches are represented in orange, so you can tell that I'm in the page branch right now. And so best practice is when I need to make any edits, I create a page branch. And these are technically like drafted pages. So if another person came in and was making changes on the About Us page and they hit publish, because I'm currently active in this branch, you can be sure that these edits that I'm currently making aren't going to be included in what's being published. So I can go in and maybe change this here. I can maybe change this button space class. Maybe I want to change this to turquoise. You know, I can go in and make the necessary design changes. When I'm ready, up at the top, all I need to do is check for updates. And what this is going to do is surface any class change conflicts that have taken place. Because we're working with multiple people, if somebody else went in and changed that button class, we want to make sure that we're surfacing the changes so we can move forward appropriately. Let's say we're happy with these changes. All we would need to do is merge back with the site. And this branch is going to be merged in with the original copy. So what this tells the rest of the team is that if there are no active branches or if the branch has been merged, whatever is living in here without the branches is ready to be pushed into the next stage of deployment.
Gotcha.
Is this something that you would find useful or valuable if we're thinking of having multiple cooks in the kitchen? Is this something that you think would help your team?
Yeah, interestingly, I mean, it's a very common workflow for our dev team, given that's how they kind of see it. But for design, we never really had to think about that. Yeah, because we never touch the live page. The only time that a designer will come in after the handover and everything is like doing QA and everything. So you never really have to thought about it. But yeah, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
And I think
Well,
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
go ahead,
Never
Simone.
really had to thought about it, but yeah, it really helps to one give visibility on what pages are like in progress and is there that's interesting. I've never had to thought about that.
go ahead, Sam.
No, I was just going to say sometimes we see this not being an issue because teams don't have the resources or the ability to actually go in and iterate off of pages. But what we
Yeah.
do see when folks are, working page branching into their workflows is that now the marketing team can, we can ship this homepage with this turquoise button. If it's not working, if they're noticing that it's not getting, if it's reducing the amount of clicks they're getting, they can go in, quickly iterate, make that change to the color of the button. And now they have the option of doing that without having to like pull in those different team members to make the changes for them. So it just kind of opens up the art of the possible on how much control they can actually have on these pages.
Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
the other point that I wanted to call out with branching is to Sam's point. If one of our North Stars here is speed, what you'll
Yeah.
see is with Webflow, we don't want to bottleneck you. And what can happen if it requires a change in workflow, right? Because you're used to doing this in like a prototyping environment. So on Figma, then wireframing, and then your devs are the ones who are actually coding. The reverse would be happening here, where you can continue to prototype on Figma, but then you can actually import your Figma designs directly into Webflow. And so Webflow then becomes a design tool. And it's a lot less efficient when you have one designer who's like working on a home page and you can't have somebody else working on a separate page because they're in the design. And so ultimately we
That's
want to
true.
enable an efficient process. And it was geared towards having two or three people working. And if a page is not ready, it doesn't have to get published. It can remain in a staged branch environment until you're happy with
Yep.
it. But other
Hmm.
changes on the site can get shipped live, which is exactly what Sam shared. So
Hmm.
we typically, when we're thinking about enterprise versus a consumer plan, if a
Yeah.
team is looking to be more efficient, it's an
Yep.
enterprise use case. If a team is maybe
100%.
one designer or one marketer, they can get away with being on a consumer tier.
Yep. Makes sense. And for those branches, am I able to see activity log? I'm guessing with the new API, it's possible to kind of do it. Yeah, on a
Mm,
branch.
yeah.
Ah,
So we
got
have
you. Yeah,
the
makes sense.
site activity log here. You can see, you can see that I created this branch. I
Mm,
modified the pages. You can see the class that I actually changed, which was that button space class here that changed that color. So
yep.
if, your QA team was like, what's going on with this turquoise button? When did that happen? You would be able to go back into the site activity log, find that class that was changed, and then,
Mm,
make the revisions if necessary. Um,
got you.
so just making sure that while you have, I mean, I'm the only one working in this project, but you can see
Hmm.
who made the changes and at what time. So just having that layer of security in place when we're thinking about adding
Awesome.
more folks into the project and spinning up more pages more frequently and making these different iterations on
Mhm.
these pages um, faster.
Sam, question. In terms of this site activity, is this like a snapshot a snapshot history where like I can click on any of those activities and it reverts back in history back in time, or like to that instance and kind of yeah,
Yeah, so not
replace with
in
those
this,
edits. Yeah.
yeah, not in this log here. This is just it's just a
Uh,
static log. It's not like you can
got
bonk a
you.
button and it will revert the change.
Yep.
However, Webflow does take automatic and manual backups of
Okay.
the full
Okay.
site.
Mm.
So if at any point you want to take a manual backup, you can just create a new one. We
Mm.
also, you can see all these backups that are stored that are automated. If you wanted to,
Yeah.
you could go back and preview the version of the site that was live. And so
Yeah.
if there were a bunch of changes that were made, and too many to revert back and you wanted to jump back to, a week before, you'd be able to
Hmm.
go back and restore that version of your site, immediately publish, and
Brilliant.
you've got, very little or no downtime if you needed to make kind of a full restore.
Beautiful.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is very helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. So lastly, publishing workflows, we kind of took a look at it before, but it's essentially being able to create that multi-step process in deploying all these changes. So you can see a list of or a summary of changes that were made taking place in the designer. So this would be for
Mm.
design folks or your marketing folks, anybody who's making these changes that are kind of, work in progress. Once you're ready, we can click publish to staging, and all of those changes are going to be pushed to your staging
Mm.
environment. Right now, this is on a webflow.io domain, but you can add a custom domain. It can be
Mm.
password protected. And so this is technically a live version of your site. You can share this link with your QA
Mhm.
team. And so while they're sending feedback through Slack or in comment mode, you can kind of cycle that feedback consistently throughout the designer, and you can continuously push all those changes to staging and, keep on working with your team that needs to review it. And then when
Mhm.
you're absolutely ready, everything's been greenlit. There would be a button here if I had a custom domain added to this project, but you can bonk that
Mm.
button and it's going to be pushed to your production. So by the time it gets here, everything has been completely reviewed and passed on from each stage of deployment. And so,
Yeah,
you can really make sure that anything that gets to this stage isn't has been approved.
sounds good.
Mhm.
Yep.
Cool. Well, that is it for the demo. We've got about 5 minutes, so I want to pass things back to Simone for next steps. But before I kind of stop sharing my screen, Joseph, um, is there anything top of mind that you want to talk about that I didn't answer in the demo today?
Sure. Maybe to kind of put an example, maybe like for webflows on your website, the blog, and even on the resources tab, there is a way that you guys have put it by different categories and tags. I was just
Right.
wondering in terms of in Webflow how or Designer how does that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
give an example.
within your CMS, what you can do is add different categories.
Ah,
So within
okay.
your different collections, you can add categories to those different articles. You can always add different tags or meta descriptions, title tags, anything that you'd like to add, you'd be able to add to these individual pages. I can send some more information
Mm,
to you afterward. But
sure.
building
Okay.
kind of a search functionality within Webflow
Yeah.
is
Mm,
pretty seamless as well. You can do that within the Webflow designer, but it essentially will kind of crawl your site, your CMS items or your static pages for any of those search parameters and kind of generate that collection, that list of collection pieces for you. So, or
okay.
collection items for you. So, yeah.
Sweet. All right, cool. Beautiful.
Cool.
Let's
I
just
just
set
sent
that.
over a couple, like one Webflow University article that has to do
Um,
with sorting in the CMS. And I can send
mhm.
over some examples too, like Jasper.ai does a really great job
Yeah.
sorting their resources, and you can sort by like topic or most recent. We do it too on
Mhm.
our Webflow customers.
Yeah.
Now, I know it's almost 2 o'clock in the morning. The
Oh
middle of
wow,
the
thanks,
day
Lai.
is not the best time to make decisions, but I wanted to get your
Sure.
feedback here and get a pulse check on what you think makes sense as a next step. Typically, what we would do is
Mm,
I can put together a custom package that includes the collaboration functionality that we highlighted today. And
sure.
then you and I would continue to iterate based on things like CMS scale and bandwidth scale for the
Hmm.
site, and that'll determine pricing.
Hmm.
And there's no rush. I know you're still in evaluation phase, but then we
Yeah.
can kind of, once we're working with solid numbers, start to build a business case together.
Hmm.
That's typically what happens on our side, but that is like based on the experience. What does it look like for you at Contact Out? What are your initial thoughts and feelings?
Sure. So for us, yes, we are still currently in the evaluation phase, with a number of other vendors, where our evaluation criteria is obviously cost and budget. Cost is one of the components of it, but where we are currently also looking at is in terms of the workflow, and collaboration aspects of it, and seeing which one is just the most intuitive and that is aligns with our workflow. Because what we notice every vendor has either that capability or the lack of that capability, and then if they have that capability, how intuitive, how simple, how straightforward is it to kind of set up. Mm, yeah, the other ones is just looking at the functionality of it and which one uh, gives us the option or the flexibility to create something that we have in mind. So that's why the examples that you sent over with like Jasper and even with your sites does give us a sense of the things that we can do with Webflow, and then seeing if are we looking for something a little more complicated, a little more advanced, or is that in line with us? So we're also kind of using that as aspect. Other than that, it's just making sure that everything is SEO optimized, everything is in IOS in compliance, security wise. Everything else is like those like the basic one, but obviously are still important for us to
Yeah,
consider.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's helpful, Chris.
Uh,
Um,
mhm.
just like curious, based on what we just showed,
Mm,
what's your feedback? Does this match Contact Out's workflow and does it feel intuitive?
gotcha. Um, it does. The slight concern is the obviously the with every vendor there is a different like philosophy in terms of the approach. Webflow it does seem like it's inspired by dev, but also kind of made to be collaborative with designers and other marketers and content writers and everything. So it'd be interesting to see if that mental model works well with our designers and our content and marketing team, if that's something aligned with them.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we will have to kind of like let them watch the demo and kind of get a sense of in terms of where their head is at. But everything else in terms of the components, the setup, those which is a very drag and drop nature, um, those seems quite straightforward for us to apply. Um, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's the primary one that stood out for me from today's demo. The other one is just like previewing content, commenting. Um, yeah. So that is still not too bad. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are still not too bad. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have to evaluate our options, and then from there we will see. We'll make a decision.
That
Yeah.
sounds good. I think that there's still a bit of a gap between being
Yeah.
able to like make an informed decision, and
Hmm.
I'm happy to help, and obviously with Sam too. I'm speaking for you,
Hmm.
but help
Yeah.
fill that gap in other ways. I think the first step is, like you said, having your team review the demo. I can also
Yeah.
go over some additional resources. Do you mind
Sure.
if I ask, who else are you also looking at? Like WordPress?
Sure.
Is it a headless solution? Who else are we
Sure.
going up against?
Yeah, uh for the WordPress one, obviously it's with Elementor.
Yeah.
With other website builders that are Squarespace, Wix, another one is we also kind of exploring Shopify, but yeah, maybe not the right one. And also Framer as well. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Those we
yeah,
hear those a lot. Okay.
yeah,
Uh, I will say with Squarespace and Wix, what
yeah,
you gain in ease of use, you kind of
yeah, 100%.
tend to sacrifice in terms of power because you're limited.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and Framer we come up again against quite often. The difference with Framer is it's around process. So being able to have
Hmm.
like these really dedicated workflows, but cost is also going to play a huge role if you're open to it. Let's not connect it in the middle of the night. Maybe we could do like morning your time later in the week, and we can
Sure,
do
no
the
worries.
pricing exercise. So that way you have like a full idea of what the
Mhm.
investment might look like.
So in terms of for just like pricing, just give me a high level. Is it based on the functionality that we are including in the enterprise plan, or is it limited by number of pages, visits, traffic? Yeah, kind of give me an idea in terms of how do you guys approach that? Is it a usage basis? Is it more of a feature based plan? Yeah.
It
Mm.
has to do with the workspace functionality. So that is that
Hmm.
advanced
Hmm.
collaboration piece, being able to
Hmm.
branch, have the activity log, and the
Got you.
coding
Okay.
workflow. So we
Yeah.
price enterprise based on the workspace, which includes 5 seats. So you're not paying per seat. And then
Yeah.
the other thing that goes into the pricing has to do with scalability. So that's not
Mm.
number of pages, but more related to the number of CMS collections that you might need. I will say we're quite generous. So we're thinking about like you'd have access to 15,000 blog posts
Yeah.
baked into
I-
enterprise. So you have a lot of runway to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Like high level pricing, we tend to range. Sorry, and the third component is support from the Webflow team.
Mm.
So that
Sure.
is having somebody onboard your team and be able to provide technical guidance as you're setting up CMS filters, let's say.
Hmm.
And if you run into any problems as you're starting to build, they can help consult for that.
Hmm.
So, three different elements that go into the price, but a range for enterprise investments that's fair for you to
Sure.
take home. Again, given it's quite wide, is between 25 to $50,000 annually.
Sure.
Higher end
Understand.
has to do with more support from the team, more resources on our
Hmm.
end enabling. And then
Hmm.
the lower end of the scale is you're still getting enterprise support, but it's
Hmm.
really about the collaboration that's in the product and the way that you are going to be working together on Webflow. So there's a lot of flexibility with those numbers, but that's kind of
100%.
a range for you to have in your head.
Gotcha. And in terms of like, are there like add-on costs that we are looking at it in terms of migrations? Because we do hear of like working with, for us, it's especially when it comes down to SEO, because for some of the pages we have reviewed traffic and authority on.
Yeah,
Um, and the last thing we want is to move to a new solution and everything breaks, and then
you lose your traffic.
yeah, that would get me fired very fast. So yeah,
Oh,
so kind of making sure there's that. Yeah, so there yeah, so what is that add-on services, or yeah, how do y'all thinking? Or was that even a non-issue with Webflow? Yeah,
so yeah, great, very important question.
yeah,
Actually, there's three ways to answer that question. The
sure.
first is, I think it depends on if you're completely owning this in-house and you're essentially
Yes.
creating like a clone of your existing site
Hmm.
today. Our
Hmm.
technical team, and this is available to you on Enterprise, would be able
Sure.
to offer some support around using reverse proxies and then making sure the
Okay.
migration is quite smooth on a higher SLA with Webflow. So that would be like a
Yeah.
customer success manager is involved. He or
Mhm.
she would actually do like mapping support. So they would be there with you
Okay.
on the day that you're turning off traffic to your WordPress site and redirecting it to the Webflow
Mm.
site. And their goal is the same as your goal. It's enabling success. So you just have more hands-on support. And then I think the final approach that some of our customers take is they
Mm.
work with a contractor or like a agency partner who's
Yeah.
responsible for some of the dev stuff.
Okay.
I don't know if that
Gotcha.
makes sense for
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
content.
Yeah.
Oh, Sam, go
Yeah,
ahead.
that
No, I'll just speak to like the actual capabilities within Webflow, but
sure.
everything that you saw kind of visually managing the design, you can also do that with
Mm.
your SEO settings. So being able to add
Mm.
title tags, meta descriptions, schema markup for each of your individual pages. You can add 301
Yeah.
redirects, excuse me, your robots.txt file, sitemap, all of those things
Mm.
can
Yes.
be managed in your project as well. Not something that we covered today, but can definitely share
Yeah.
some videos if you'd like to take a look at what that would look like in product as well.
Sure. Yeah, that would be helpful. Awesome. Yeah, yeah. We do hear there's kind of a range of services from others as well. For kind of doing kind of like a DIY version of it, or doing it with you with working with the team, the vendors team, or the customer support, as well as like working a done for you kind of service with agencies. Um, yeah, but I'm guessing like with a done for you agency type, that is a separate agreement with the contractor or the agency, and that is separate from a separate conversation altogether. Yeah, if
Yes,
you're going down that route.
yes and
Yep,
no.
sweet.
So we have like a network
Mhm.
Webflow experts that we can recommend. And
Sure,
oftentimes, I mean, this is too early to really touch
of
on this,
course.
but we can get creative with billing. So a
Okay.
percentage of the Webflow agreement can be portioned to working with an external partner to help with some of
Sure.
the dev work.
Mhm.
So again, early stages, we're in evaluation. We're not talking like
Yeah,
hard
I
numbers
understand.
yet because you haven't decided on the vendor of choice. But
Of
I
course.
think
Yeah.
those are all things to keep in mind. So if you did want to go the agency route, we can offset some of that cost. Or if you wanted to work with Webflow directly and enable your team, we can help
Mhm.
you there too.
Mm.
But from here,
Yeah.
what do you want to do? Should we find time to do the pricing exercise, or do we want to take things internally and then reconnect in like a week?
Yeah, let's do that first. So for next week we are having our offsite, so it's gonna be a little difficult to do that. So either in 2 weeks or 3 weeks time, once we are back, that would be slightly better. So yeah, because we're still in the process as well as evaluating. So I think it'd be a bit too premature to
Yeah,
yeah to kind of hone down on something at this moment. Yeah.
perfect. I sent you an
Beautiful.
invite to connect via Slack.
Yep.
That way we're out of
Yep.
email.
Yep.
I'll share our recording. Sam and I could put together some
Sure.
resources on SEO. And then
Hmm.
on at your offsite, where are you going?
Oh, you're just going KL. Just KL. But Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. KL.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Enjoy. The
Yeah.
weather will probably be humid and beautiful. And
Yeah.
then let's stay in touch via
Hopefully.
Slack,
Fingers crossed.
figure out time in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Awesome. Beautiful.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Amani.
Thanks so much.
And thank you so much, Tim.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
of course. It's nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. All right. Have a good one. Cheers.
Oh.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.